Well, welcome back. 2008 Hyundai Elantra today, just a maintenance video. Front brakes. This car sat for a little bit. It's got pretty bad corrosion in the front brakes, so we're going to replace those front rotors and pads, and I'm going to go through a couple little things that I always stress and always do that don't take that long to do but make a big difference in how your brakes wear and how well they perform. Now I've got the car up on jack stands, supported. Take the wheel off. If you don't have air tools, break these loose before you pick the car up off the ground. Alright, we're just going to go back in here. Got two bolts, one here, one down the bottom, holding the caliper bracket on. Two slide bolts for the actual caliper. These are 14 millimeter. These are 17. We're going to break them loose to get at this. Probably be really good if I knew what I did with my screwdriver. I don't know that I'm going to be able to pry this back at all. It's so corroded that I don't think I can really get a shot at it here to move it. I don't think. I'm trying, but maybe. Pull the caliper out and give me some, yeah, that's better. Give me a little bit of room. I'm going to break these slide bolts loose first. My light up here where it needs to be. As I said before, 14. There's one. Sitting there for now. Two. You can hang this if you need to. I'm just going to set it right here for now. I need the wobble. You lose some of your torque with the wobble. And of course I need it. Just enough that I can't get it. Maybe the top one though. See if I can get the top one here. Get the caliper out of the way. 0 for 2. Need a wobble for both of them, or just a ratchet instead of a gun. I'm going to try a gun first. If I can do it with a gun, it just makes it easier. Big if. Pretty tight. There's one. Another one here. I know you can't see this. There's not much to see. Just two bolts. Just two. They gotta come out. Both out. Gotta get my bracket off of here, which is pretty. You can see it's corroded to it pretty well. Doesn't want to come off. Alright, we'll set that aside. We'll get to that later. Alright, now, these have screws in them to hold the face of the rotor on. If you don't have an impact driver, which I don't, probably should, but I don't, use the right size Phillips head on these. And torque it as you drive it in, and it'll usually come right out of there. Not too bad at all. Okay, set that down. One more. Same thing. Put a little pressure on it counterclockwise. They usually come out of there. Sometimes they can be difficult, but they usually come right out of there. Alright. Gotta get this off here now. A lot of corrosion on this guy. Let me get a bunch of cord to hang it up. It's going to be a pain. Well, in the better spot, maybe. Now this is. I'm not keeping these rotors. They're really corroded. I think they should come off without too much problem. I say that now, but you can see all the corrosion. There it goes. A lot of corrosion. You see they're just caked in there, full of it. So these are not getting cut. Now we're going to push this piston. Actually, before we push this in, we're going to push this piston back into the bore. I'm going to clean in there. I'm going to get a quickie wheel. I want to clean that corrosion off. Don't push it in before you clean it. Now I had my hand in the way the whole time. You push it in, you got the rubber seal right against it, and you go in there and cut it, or with especially with a power sanding disc, you take a chance of damaging that. So leave it out, and then we'll go in there, we'll sand it, and then we'll push it in. A little difficult to get out of this. We want to clean this corrosion. We don't want to take the metal off. We just want to clean the corrosion out from behind there. Yeah, we'll get some brake clean and clean that off, of course. I'm just going to get all the corrosion off of there and set that aside. We're going to do the same for the face of this. We're going to go, it's not too bad actually, it's pretty clean. We want to get around this center real well. That's usually where it binds up, is right around that center flange. And get around there and get a couple spots here that aren't real clean. The whole key to this is just to keep the corrosion from pushing the pads around or locking them up. These two tabs ride against the back of the outside. This obviously the piston rides against the back of the inside. And we're going to come in here with high temp grease and grease all these points where it meets the back of the pad. And keep moisture out of there and keep corrosion from building up in there. We're going to push this back in. We're just going to steal one of our old pads here. This is what happens when you get corrosion, right? These pads should move freely. They're not moving at all. You're going to knock them out of there. They're so bad. They're just locked up. They're barely working. They have a little bit of life, but not much left in them. You can see how beat up they are. They don't look real good. So we're just going to use one of them. You can use a C-clamp or a big pair of channel locks to do this. I just have this little brake tool. Just turn it back in. You should be able to see how easily that goes in. If it doesn't go in easy, you need to check your caliper or your hose here. Maybe it's locked up, maybe it's clogged or something. It should go right back in there without any problem, which this one did. And then we'll just set that aside. I'll come back and grease that a little bit later. I've got two brackets here. We're going to clean them up. I've got the hardware off of this one already. We want to come in and clean in behind and get any corrosion off of where that hardware sits. A couple different ways you can do it. I will wire wheel these when I get most of it off of here, but wire wheeling them will not take the major corrosion off of these. You have to get it off with either sandblaster or file like I'm doing here. You don't want to remove metal, but you do want to get the corrosion off of there. I'm just getting the bad stuff off. Not a lot to see. You got to clean behind these, and you got to put new hardware. I say this every time I do brakes, every time I do a video. Always use new hardware and always clean behind it and grease. It makes a huge difference, and it doesn't take that long to do. Going through and clean these up really well behind where the hardware will go. So I'm going to pull these slide pins. Check your boots. Check these boots. Always see if they're cracked or dried out. If they are, replace them. These are not. These are in good shape, so I'm I'm not going to replace them. Just pull your pins out. I don't know what these are grease. Some of the greases look like white lithium grease. That's not the right grease for this, but I'm going to pull those pins, clean them off real good. I'm going to clean out inside of there as well. There's a little bit of corrosion around the top of these. I'm going to take them to the wire wheel and just run the wire wheel on the top and clean all that corrosion out of there. Get that out of there. Sometimes these pins are different. Sometimes they have a collar, like that one has a little collar on it. So you want to remember where it came out of and put it back the same place it came out of. The collar on that one. So we'll put it back in the same one. Let me run these over on the wire wheel real quick and just clean them off, and then we'll come back and finish this up. So I've wire wheeled these. You can see, hopefully you can see right how clean they are now. That's that groove right there. If they're really bad, replace them. I just wire wheel them and clean all that corrosion out of there and make sure we get that out of there. Now, I'm sure people are going to freak out. Some people are going to freak because I'm going to spray brake clean inside these boots. But it's not going to be in there for very long, just to clean them out. I don't know what the grease was that they used. It really looked like white lithium grease. I don't know whether it was that was used in this. Shouldn't be, but I'll show you what grease I use. Right now, I'm just going to spray this down, clean them out. It certainly looks like it, the way it's kind of coming out in chunks. It certainly looks like it was lithium grease in there. It's not the right grease for this. Shouldn't use that. I don't know why they did that, but maybe not, but that's what it looked like. Clean it out of there real good. For grease, I use this Ultra Disc Brake Caliper Lube Silicone Formula from Permatex. We're just going to put a little bit down the boot, each side. Don't fill it up. You don't want a ton in there. It'll lock the slide pins up if you do that, but you do want to get some in there. So make sure these are clean. Our bushing with the pin or the collar on it goes on this end, so we'll just put a light coating around it. Make sure you get some up in that, around that ring that we cleaned off. It had corrosion on it. Not a lot, just thin coating on it. And we'll just push it in place. Make sure it locks in. Push it down until it grabs the boot. Grabs the boot. That's what should spin freely, move in and out. Looks good. Do the same thing with this one. Sure it's clean. There we go. That looks good. Alright, now I'm just finishing up. I've used this. This is Permatex Ceramic Extreme. I'm almost out of it. I've heard some people have problems with this with rubber, particularly Toyota and some other makes. I've never had an issue, but I switched over to the other Permatex because I've never heard any problems with that one. Both ceramic, both very good. As I said, I've used this to do everything on a ton of cars and never seen an issue, but I have heard some people have a problem when you're using it with certain types of rubber. certain makes. So I'm using up, this is metal to metal contact where I'm doing now. So we cleaned up behind where the hardware goes. Now we want to grease that. And then a ton, you want to just coat it. Now, my experience with this is when the car comes back in for its next set of brakes, and however many miles, this stuff it'll still be there. It'll still be keeping the moisture out of there, keeping corrosion from getting in there. It works very well, and no complaints at all with it. And that's all we're trying to do is behind the hardware is to keep moisture out of there and keep corrosion from getting in there. Because what moisture does, it builds up corrosion behind the hardware, and it does this to the heart, pushes it up. And when it does that, it pinches the end of the pads, and they can't move like they should. I've heard some people say you need to grease on top of the slides. I don't do that, and I don't recommend that. It's not my experience. They will slide fine on these stainless steel slides. That's what they're made for. If you put grease on top of this, it's just going to collect dirt and junk off the road, and it's going to bind the pad up. I don't do that. If you want to do it, there's always a big debate about that going on. I don't really want to get into that debate. If that's the way you want to do it that way. This is the way I do it. The way I've seen it done over I don't know how many years, and I've never had issues with it. And to me, it makes sense that you don't want the grease on top of the hardware. It just collects dirt and road grime and everything else and gums everything up. You just want it behind, keep the moisture out of there and keep the corrosion from starting. So, same thing on this end, nothing exciting. This is important. It probably took me 10 or 15 minutes to clean them. If you had a sandblaster, it wouldn't take hardly any time at all. But it's important. It doesn't take that long, and doing these little things makes a big difference in how the pads, how the brakes work, and how long they're going to last. My brake pads. These are Wagner Thermoquiets, QC 924A for this particular car. I've used these a lot. I've had no issues. I know some other people I've said the noise issues, but I think that was before they reformulated them. I've been using them for a couple of years and haven't had any issues with them. So you do have one pad that has an indicator, noise indicator on it. That goes to the inside on these. So you should be able to just slide these into place. But they should not bind up or be hard. If so, you might not have gotten all the corrosion out. So there they're in place. Let's see if I can show you this. They move real easy. You can slide in and out real easy. That's what you want. I'm not going to take it out of there because I had to fight to get it in there because it was giving me grief. Alright. The same thing on this side. At least that's the plan. There we go. Now they're ready. It's ready to be put on the car. Now back over at the car. Got the new rotors, and I'll show you the part number here. Hopefully not upside down. Try to read it to you at the same time here. I don't even know if you can see that, but BD126533E. These are Wagner E-shields. I mentioned the pads earlier. I've had good luck with these rotors as well. There's no comebacks at all. They seem to be pretty good. I have that coating on them. I've slightly greased, cleaned this hub, lightly greased it. And when you put this on, remember you got 2 screws. So you've got to line those screw holes up when you put this on. So make sure they're in the right place. Slide that on. I've already greased my caliper, the backing of the tabs, and the face of the piston so they don't corrode. Push the pad around. I get my 2 screws here. Start them back in. I'll find them in my pile of bolts down here. Right in front of me. Didn't even see it. The only good thing about these screws is they hold the rotor in place for you when you're working on it. But other than that, they're a pain. Not real big on them actually. Tilt you down a little bit here. A little bit high. There we go. I'll put them back in there. I'll clean the face of that one more time before I put it back together. These come with a coating. I did clean them. I did do an initial cleaning on them. And then the coatings, they have a coating on them so they don't rust when you get them, when they're in shipment. So, clean it off really good. Make sure it's clean. The other ones that were on here, they were thick enough to cut again, but they're so full of corrosion and they're just loaded up. I don't even bother with them, then it's not worth messing with them. So we're going to put our bracket back in place now. I just lost one of my pads. Just decided to come out. There it goes. Which is a good thing. It means they're not jammed up, but it's not good in the sense that it's giving me grief. I just lost them both now. Pads are giving me grief. They just want to keep popping out of the holders, which I guess is a good thing. It means they're not jammed up. But I'd really like them to stay put for a minute so I can get this hung back on the rotor here, and they're not. So let me start this in. My inside one's off already. Pads came off. I'll have to reseat it here and get this lined up. I know you can't really see this, but it's just the two bolts go back into the bracket and hold the bracket in place. So, not that it's anything exciting. The 2 bolts we care about are right here. There's the one, and the other one's down here. And we'll just tighten them back up, and then we'll put the caliper back on. Use those pads, make sure they're in tight. Here you can see the grease. Hopefully you can see the grease that's on this. Make sure you don't kink your line when you put them back together. So I'm going to hang it over the top. Slide it in place. Make sure you get past your slide bolts. Just put your retaining bolts back in. That'll hold it in place. Bottom one, line that up. .14mm. Don't crush these. They're pretty small bolts. I'm turn my gun down here a little bit. Just snug them up. Okay. That's fine. Both good. That's pretty much it. We will obviously put the wheel back on here. Before you get in and drive this, get in and pump the brake till it gets harder. You're going to have a little bit of a scary moment when you don't have any brakes. Clean that off one more time. A little bit of grease on that. Make sure we're clean. That's it. I always stress this: grease behind the hardware after you clean it, and always replace the hardware. Usually a good set of brake pads will come with hardware. If not, spend a couple extra dollars and get them. Don't try to reuse what's on there. They wear as well. They get worn from the pad, end of the pad sliding back and forth on it. This is moving real easy, which it should. That's good. That's what you want to see. Slide pins are working good. Everything's ready to go. So that's it. Real quick maintenance item. Not really a repair. Brakes. Always replace your hardware. Always clean behind the hardware. Grease behind the hardware with high temp grease, brake grease. You'll get better, longer life out of your brakes, and they'll perform better. They won't bind up on you, and you know, it's important. You would think, well, it's a real simple item, and it is. It's not hard to do them. But it's how your car stops. So doing those little things makes a difference. If you have to do this, I hope this helps you out. If you like the video, subscribe below. Thanks for watching.